Hello, and welcome back to our Storytime series. Today, we're about to dive into one of the most heartwarming stories from the beloved author, Beatrix Potter, The Tailor of Gloucester. It is a gentle tale about kindness, hard work, and the quiet magic that lives in simple acts of generosity. And above all, it reminds us that even the smallest creatures, those we might overlook, can have the greatest impact. So, make yourself a warm cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and let's journey back to the 18th century, into the snow-covered lanes of Gloucester, where our story begins. Chapter 1. The Tailor's Simple Life. Once upon a time, in the charming old city of Gloucester, there lived a poor but proud tailor. He was a man of few words, small in stature, with silver hair, gentle hands, and eyes that had grown wiser with age. Though he had no family of his own, he lived quietly with a clever cat named Simpkin. Their home was also their workshop, a modest room filled with wooden shelves, boxes of colorful threads, bolts of fabric, and the comforting scent of cloth and candle wax. Each morning, the tailor would wake early and sit by the window, sewing in the pale light. He stitched coats and waistcoats for the wealthy men of Gloucester, carefully crafted pieces full of detail and dignity. Despite his poverty, the tailor was kind. Behind the walls of his shop lived a family of mice. Most people would have considered them pests, but the tailor treated them gently. He often left crumbs of bread or scraps of cloth near their holes. "There's room in this world for everyone," he would say, with a soft smile. Even the tiniest of guests. But Simpkin, the cat, did not share this kindness. He often prowled the workshop with watchful eyes, swishing his tail, trying to catch the mice. Still, he never disobeyed the tailor when asked to spare them. So the days went by quietly, in a rhythm of small kindnesses and careful stitches. Chapter 2. An Important Order. One especially cold morning, as a light snow began to fall over the cobbled streets, a tall, well-dressed gentleman stepped into the shop. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, and he wore a heavy cloak lined with fur. It was the mayor of Gloucester himself. "I've come on urgent business," said the mayor. "I am to be married on Christmas Day, and I need a coat. No, a masterpiece, worthy of the occasion." He leaned forward and said, "Cherry red silk, a cream satin lining, fine embroidery on the cuffs, pearl buttons. I want to shine brighter than the Christmas candle." The tailor bowed deeply. "It would be my greatest honor, sir. You shall have it." But once the mayor left, the tailor sat down and sighed. He opened a small tin box, his coin jar, and counted carefully. Just a few silver pieces remained. Enough, perhaps, to buy the necessary cloth, but nothing more. He would have no money left for food, for firewood, or even thread if he made a mistake. Still, he stood up, wrapped his old scarf around his neck, and made his way to the market. He chose the best silk he could find. The cherry red color gleamed like the setting sun. The satin lining was soft and cool like snow. With these treasures wrapped under his arm, he walked back to his shop, hungry and cold, yet strangely hopeful. "This coat," he whispered, "may be the finest I've ever made, or the last." Chapter 3. A Rising Storm. Over the next few days, the tailor worked from morning until midnight. His hands moved like poetry, cutting, folding, pinning, and sewing. He used the last of his candle wax to work through the night, humming softly to himself as the snow fell gently outside. But the bitter cold crept into the room. There was no more firewood, and the drafts from the windows chilled him to the bone. His bones ached, his eyes burned, his hands trembled slightly as he stitched the delicate fabric. Simpkin tried to comfort him, curling beside him, meowing quietly, but the tailor grew weaker each day. Finally, one morning, the tailor could no longer rise from bed. His forehead was hot with fever, his breathing shallow, his voice barely a whisper. The coat was almost done. The sleeves were attached, the embroidery complete, the satin smoothed perfectly inside. But the buttonholes were still unfinished. "I cannot finish it," he said, barely audible. "I have failed." Simpkin looked up, confused and concerned. Chapter 4. Simpkin and the Mice. Earlier that week, while the tailor was still strong, Simpkin had gone hunting. He had caught a few of the workshop mice and placed them in a jar. He thought he might have them later, perhaps as a meal, perhaps just to keep them away from the tailor's threads. But now, seeing his master so pale and still, Simpkin hesitated. He looked at the jar, at the frightened little mice peering up at him, and then back at the tailor, who lay shivering in bed. After a long pause, Simpkin leaped onto the table, pushed the jar over with his paw, and nudged the lid open. The mice scrambled free, but they didn't flee. They whispered among themselves and quickly disappeared into the walls. When the tailor fell into a deep sleep that evening, something strange and wonderful began. Tiny rustling sounds came from every corner of the room. Little paws tiptoed across the wooden floor. A soft, golden glow filled the air. The mice had returned. Chapter 5. A Night of Magic. As midnight approached, the shop slowly came to life. Dozens of mice emerged from their hiding places. Old mice with spectacles, young ones full of energy, and wise mother mice with spools of thread in their arms. Together, they gathered on the workbench and looked at the unfinished coat. The mayor's wedding was just days away. Time was short. They lit a small lantern with a broken match. They unfolded the pattern. They organized the thread. Then they began to sew. One mouse worked the needle. Another held the fabric taut. A third passed up a pearl button from the floor. They climbed up thimbles like ladders. They pulled the thread with their teeth. They used straight pins like walking sticks. All through the night, they worked in perfect silence, broken only by the occasional hum of a lullaby, passed down through generations of tailor's mice. Outside, snow fell heavily. Inside, golden light flickered against the walls, and the air was filled with the soft, quick movements of tiny hands, making something beautiful. When the first rays of morning appeared in the window, the coat was finished. It was flawless. The mice gathered around it and nodded in quiet satisfaction. Then, one mouse laid a note on the table, written in the smallest handwriting. "Finished by your friends. Merry Christmas." And just like that, they vanished. Chapter 6. A Miraculous Morning. Sunlight slowly filled the tailor's workshop. The old man stirred in bed, coughing softly, the fever finally breaking. His eyes fluttered open. The room was still. The air smelled faintly of wax and silk. He rose slowly, his legs trembling beneath him, and walked toward the workbench. His heart sank as he remembered the unfinished coat, the job he had failed to complete. But when he reached the table, he stopped in astonishment. The coat finished, every detail complete, the buttonholes perfect, finer than anything he had ever made. Tears welled in his eyes. This is impossible," he whispered. Then he saw the note. He picked it up with shaking hands and read the tiny words, "Finished by your friends. Merry Christmas." He looked around the room, but there was no one in sight. Only Simpkin, sitting quietly by the fire. The tailor gently folded the coat, wrapped it in brown paper, and set off, still weak, but smiling to deliver it. Chapter 7. The Tailor's Fortune Turns. The mayor opened the parcel and stared in wonder. "This is the finest coat in all of England," he declared. "A miracle." Word of the tailor's skill spread quickly. Soon, his shop was filled with customers. Gentlemen, merchants, and even nobles came to order their coats and waistcoats. The tailor could now afford good food, warm firewood, and fresh candles. But he never forgot the miracle that had saved him. Each night, he left crumbs of bread by the wall. And Simpkin never hunted the mice again. Something had changed in both of them, and as for the mice, no one saw them. But sometimes, when the shop was quiet, the sound of thread being pulled through fabric echoed faintly through the walls. Reflection and life lesson. And so, the tailor's life changed, not through wealth or fame, but through kindness, humility, and unexpected help from the smallest of friends. The Tailor of Gloucester is more than a charming Christmas tale. It's a gentle reminder that no act of goodness is ever wasted. When we choose to be generous, to share, to protect, to be kind, we plant seeds that grow into things far greater than we can imagine. Even in our darkest moments, we might be surprised by who comes to help, or how. So keep believing in people, in goodness, and in a little magic. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again for the next story time.